Hello, I want to spend a couple of minutes talking about research for this inquiry-based project. And what I mean is, what are we actually typing in and what sorts of databases are we using? So let me start with this idea of what we're typing in. Obviously, all of you are choosing a specific artifact and then you're starting to investigate the impacts on the culture. And now I know that I've given you this document that gives you all of these questions to consider. And of course, I'm not saying that you must use these specific questions. I'm saying that these are the sorts of ideas that you can explore. So you can consider this list here as kind of a foundation or a springboard to work from. And so the idea becomes, how do we move from this to actually typing in terms? And so the idea is that you take your artifact itself and then you think about angles. And so, for example, if I wanted to investigate the artifact of YouTube, I could easily search for YouTube and impacts, or YouTube and benefits, or YouTube and history, or YouTube and consequences. And so those search terms are probably going to provide a broad enough query that I'm going to be able to pull a ton of articles that can potentially give me some interesting angles to pursue. Now, we can also get more specific, and I've mentioned here groups. And so you can think about not just YouTube consequences, but you can think YouTube consequences on teenagers. And so now we're getting a little bit more specific, but we're doing the research on a given group that we're interested in. And so I hope that this gives you a little bit of an understanding of how we move from these sorts of questions to how we can actually turn those into search terms for information. And the other big point I want to make here too is that as you get into your project, you may be moving away from just the search term of your given artifact. And again, let me give you an example. In one of the sample projects that I provided, the student was investigating Netflix. And so at a point, the student saw, or the student concluded that Netflix seemed to be having some negative consequences. And so in the student's mind, these negative consequences connected to this idea of anti-intellectualism. And so now what the student did was investigate anti-intellectualism in the culture. The student was not looking for information about YouTube specifically. Instead, the student was looking for anti-intellectualism, was finding those articles, was finding the sorts of examples that those authors were giving, and then was bringing the Netflix example in as yet another as yet another example of what could cause anti-intellectualism. And so what we see here is that some of your research is going to be directly connected to your artifact and to the angles that you've attached to that artifact. Other research may be connected to ideas or concepts that you see your artifact could be connected to, but you're not necessarily researching your artifact, you're researching those concepts and you're doing the connecting. So I hope that that clarifies a little bit with regard to how to think about doing the research for the project. And now I want to talk a little bit about where to go. And to do this, I want to take a look at the MiraCosta homepage, because all of you are paying to be a student at MiraCosta. Oh, by the way, I don't know if you can see my nails. I've been partying really hard with 4-year-olds. So, okay. So, all of you have been paying to be a student at MiraCosta, and so you have access to a wealth of information that I think can make this assignment a little bit more straightforward. And specifically, I'm referring to the library. And if you guys go to the website and you click on the library here, it's going to take you now to this homepage, the library homepage, that has a one search function. And this one search function is pretty amazing. So let's imagine for a second that we use this one search function and we do that project on YouTube. So we type in YouTube and we're interested in, whoops, excuse me, let me learn how to type, in impacts. And we just do a little search as if we were on Google, and we find all of these potentially useful articles here. And let's say that we had never thought about the impact of YouTube on politics, but we see that idea and it's very interesting to us, so we decide that we want to read the article, and we click here, and we see that we actually have access to this book, this electronic book. And not only do we have access to this electronic book, but we know by virtue of using the OneSearch capability that we're also pulling from a credible source. In fact, that everything we find from the library database is going to be a credible source. Furthermore, we also have this function over here that allows us to cite. And if we click there, whoops, I'm sorry, then we can easily just copy paste the MLA citation here and put that into the paper. And so I'm suggesting that we consider using this OneSearch function that we have with the MiraCosta website, because you're going to be finding credible sources. You're going to have access to the entire article, and it also helps when it comes to doing all of the MLA documentation. Now, must you only use one source? No, not at all. Let me see if I can go back to the library here. We could just go right back to the library, and instead of using the OneSearch, we could look at databases by subject. Now we have all sorts of different databases that we could use, and one of the great ones for this assignment is Academic Search Ultimate. And if you take a look, the interface for that database is very similar to the OneSearch, and so we can type in and do a search. Let's try it again, YouTube impacts, and you're going to see that we get a wealth of credible sources that we can work through, and then we also have those functions that allow us to cite the source, to do the MLA, and all of that good stuff. So my suggestion is that when you start the project, you consider using the materials that we have at MiraCosta first. Now, does that mean that you must only use the library database at MiraCosta? Not necessarily. Could you use Google? Absolutely. It is possible that you can find credible research from institutions, magazines, .govs, other .edus, etc. Of course, if you're going to go outside of the databases, then you are the one that's deciding that the materials are credible, rather than allowing the gatekeeper for the database, to decide that it's credible. And it's easy to just get rid of all that and use the databases instead. So I will allow you to find the articles however you would like to find them. You just have to make sure that the articles that you do bring in are coming from credible newspapers and credible magazines, are coming from .govs, are coming from .edus, are coming from academic journals, etc. I hope this helps as you get into the research here. As always, if you have questions, you know what to do. Take care and enjoy my nails. All right.